James, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
So, I like to start every interview by asking guests, as a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I was thinking, I was recently home in North Carolina seeing my folks, and it came up somehow that when I was a kid, I had this weird desire to ride horses. I've never ridden a horse in my life, but for a little while, I wanted to maybe train horses. It was a weird aspiration as a very young child. I don't know where I sort of got this weird fixation on horses as these like majestic beings. So that's one of the earliest things I can remember wanting to be. And then the other thing was an architect. I wanted to be an architect, and then I realized how much math architects have to do. And I was like, okay, I'm good. I don't think I want to do that.
How do you think, James, that connects? So, wanting to work with these majestic animals and wanting to be an architect, how do you think that connects to what you do today?
Working in the theater, working as a playwright and as a director, and originally as an actor, there's a little bit of horse training sensation in that. This wild, unwieldy thing, whether it's
Mm,
the play or the production, that you have to be in sort of relationship with this sort of
mm,
behemoth creature
mm,
that it's going to do what it wants to do. It could also be how I relate to my understanding of audience is like this unknowable thing that you have to love, even though you
mm,
don't know who is in the audience. And then I think the architecture thing is this real desire for there to be some sense of things being where they're supposed to be,
mm,
but that doesn't mean that it should be void of beauty
mm,
or a desire for a kind of sublime. So when I think about architecture that I really love, whether it's like Gothic cathedrals or like
mm.
really, really contemporary, sort of organic looking architecture, I'm always just very struck about those things both having great beauty. And then when you're inside of them, you understand that the functionality of them is so intentional and everything is in where it's supposed to be to
Mm,
function.
mm. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
So, for the audience listening, I was at the Aspen Ideas Festival earlier this year or a couple months ago, and James was one of the speakers on a panel. And I walked away from that panel just so inspired. I connected so much with what you said. It makes me want to cry. You spoke so deeply and so beautifully and so inspiring. And I sent James a DM on Instagram if he'd be willing to be on the podcast. And he said yes right away. And I just thought, oh my God, this is such a cool opportunity to have a conversation with you. So I'm very excited. I'm fangirling, but
It's all good. It's all good.
and something that I really connected with, James, was Kelly Corrigan, who's moderating the panel, asked you a question. And I don't even remember what the question was, but you said that you stand on a bridge. Do you mind
Yeah,
sharing
yeah.
that?
So the
Yeah.
question was, at the end of the day, who are you responsible to? I started my answer with saying that I'm responsible to the communities in which I exist, which I didn't say in that panel, but I've thought about since a great deal. Like that means I'm inclusive of that community. So I'm
Mm,
responsible to myself inside
mm,
of that as well, because I
mm,
exist and live inside of that community. That it's not a single community, it's several overlapping communities. My family, my marriage, my
mm,
colleagues, the people I'm working with in a play, that led me to think about this thing that we say in my family all the time is praise the bridge that brought you safely across.
mm,
A part of being in community with people is that you acknowledge and you have some kind of responsibility for what you're doing with your work or what you're doing in your life and how that impacts those people. And I was also relating it to like having a deeper, richer relationship to my understanding of ancestor and being in community with that. Like, what are the values of my family that started with people that I may not have met?
mm,
And how by like keeping those things and maintaining those practices and traditions, I'm continuing to be in community with people. And so that is how I show the responsibility to those people. And not that it freezes me in time, because those things are always evolving, but that there is always this connection to this place that you come from, which I think being a Black person in this country, the assumption is that we don't have any of that.
mm,
And I feel like I generationally sit in a place where there's a great deal of history between me and the first Black people brought to this country. So I feel like I have a huge legacy that I am wicking down into as an artist and as a person.
mm.
That was a long answer. I'm so sorry.
No, no. Oh my God, that was beautiful. No, I connected so deeply with that because when I think about the work I do or how I carry myself in the world, I feel responsible and almost like a duty or be the best, do as much good, be as successful as possible so I can bring others along with me. Or I feel this deep sense of gratitude.
Yeah.
Like my dad and my parents who immigrated here, like, oh, that's a deep sense of I want to do the best I can because they sacrificed so much to be here.
Exactly. That's exactly it. That is the personification of that idea of like praise the bridge that brought you safely across. It's not that you sacrifice yourself for your happiness for those
Mm,
people, but
mm,
that you're always in a space of gratitude for what they did,
mm,
because we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them.
mm. So tell us, did you always know that this is what you wanted to do in college? What was your major?
Yeah, in college, I started as a vocal performance major. I actually
Okay.
thought I wanted to be a choral music teacher, which I
So,
think back on it was so weird and bizarre that I wanted to do that, but it makes a kind of sense.
well, what do you think it was about that that interested you?
I love doing something with a group of people. And choir, you're singing with people, you're standing very close to them. It's very intimate practice. And I loved it. I really loved the sound of my voice in conversation and harmony with someone else's voice. My music teacher, Jacqueline Robinson, she is amazing. She's retired now, but very influential teacher on me in my high school years. She put me in honors choir my ninth grade year, which was unheard of. There's so many things that I say to this day that she would say to us, like
Mm,
move with purpose and destination. Now she
mm.
was just talking to us about walking from the holding room to the stage for our like
Or
our
was she?
concert.
Or was she?
Or was she? I remember I was thinking when I was at the Tonys, I was like, okay, walk with purpose and
Oh my
destination.
God.
When if it happens, make sure
Oh my
that you
God.
are
Yes.
moving
Yes.
through the space with gratitude and purpose and a sense
Mm,
of arrival when you get to where you're going. And so that's always just been in my
mm.
head. But anyway,
Do you
and
still,
I
are you
wanted to
still
have
in
that
touch
kind
with
of,
her?
and
Oh.
I am. She's in my hometown. So when I'm home, we email and occasionally we have a phone call. But I wanted to do that. I wanted to offer young people that kind of education.
Mm,
And I was in college, and my voice teacher, to his credit, was like, you know, I just don't know if this is for you.
mm,
And he gave me a host of reasons why that I won't go into great detail on. But the thing he did do is he was like, they're doing a play that's a musical over across campus. You should audition for that.
mm,
And I did. And I got in, and I got a part I was not prepared to play, but I loved it.
mm,
And I felt that sense of the intimacy, the closeness of being on the stage with other people. You're all doing a thing together, you're singing together. Like it had everything plus some new stuff that I kind of understood but didn't completely understand. And I just sort of fell in love with, because I think what he sets for me is that I really wanted to like be a performer. I really wanted to,
mm,
and that me being a choral music teacher was going to limit my ability to perform. So that's kind of the journey to that. I don't know that I've ever drawn that line until right
mm,
now. This
mm.
conversation is actually really lovely for me to do that. I'd always written little plays. I think I wrote the first play I ever wrote when I was about 15 or 16. I did them at church. It was like what I was able to do at church that I kind of dug
Mm.
doing. And so I did that a couple of times. And it wasn't until I was in college that I realized it was a career path. And so I started writing again while I was in college.
Well, first, this is aside, but I was in choir when I was in elementary school. My teacher was Miss Johnson, and me and my sisters were the only Latinos in the group. We were in a black and brown elementary school, and we would go perform at churches, and we had our songs. And there's one that I always remember, Jesus is the reason for the season. And we had like our, it was a big part of
Yeah.
elementary school, being confident and appreciating voice and singing and altos and sopranos. And it was a beautiful experience. I can see how she must have
Yeah.
impacted you in such a powerful, powerful way.
And it also sort of taught this idea that difference is complementary and not
Mm, mm,
adversarial. So, like, what sopranos can do is
mm,
strikingly different from what a bass or tenor can do. But there are these like commonalities in the music between the
mm,
tenor line and the soprano line. So there's places where they meet and it's like, oh,
mm,
we are very similar. We're doing a similar kind of work in this piece of music. And then they diverge again and become their own. It also teaches people I don't know if there's any like real research on this or not, but it teaches people this understanding that difference
Mm,
actually makes for beauty. It actually is necessary. If everybody's, yes, Gregorian chant where everyone's singing the same note is very beautiful, but is
mm,
limiting in its
mm,
emotional capacity. And I don't know if that I've ever put that together, that choir is this really powerful
mm,
way to help people understand sort of the importance of diversity.
mm. So after college, did you go straight into playwriting or was there a detour for a little bit?
I went to grad school. I started grad school in 2003. It was
Mm,
an MFA acting program.
mm,
My formal terminal training is in acting. But the entire time I was at Temple University is where I went to Morehouse College for undergraduate and then Temple for graduate school. The whole time I was there, I wrote plays. To their credit, they brought me into that program and I learned a ton in that program. But it was before a time when anybody was thinking about the identity of the students that they were teaching,
mm,
how their teaching style or how their production calendar would impact a student. Like I was the only African American student in my class, for example.
mm,
And so there was a moment in my graduate training where I just wasn't in plays with my classmates anymore. I was only in plays with the undergraduates because they needed me to be in plays that featured Black characters.
mm,
And so I got really segregated from the people
mm,
that I was learning with every day. We were in classes. And then I would see them like get to apply these things in Shakespeare. The fire it lit in me is like, well, you have to write the things that you want to do because no one's going to just give that to you. And
mm,
so that was the era that I really started
mm,
to become intentional about. I think I want this to be a more intentional part of my training. I'm not going to get it in the classroom, so I have to figure out how to do it on my own. And so I just started reading plays and writing small plays the
mm,
entire time I was in grad school. And I loved it. It was great. It was a great companion to all of the stage combat and dance and voice and Shakespeare I was learning. I also had this great education in how plays work. And I knew that I could continue to write while I was acting. So it was a perfect combination of
mm,
career and ultimate career aspiration or possibilities.
mm. Also, like life's work, like
Hmm.
purpose too,
Yeah.
in what you were writing. Well, and I love it. I want to highlight what you said. You said you realized that you had to write what you wanted to see in the world.
Yeah.
And I
Well, what
think,
I wanted to do, like, it's so weird. Like, it was
yeah,
like, and what I wanted to see, like, Toni
yeah.
Morrison says one of the reasons why she started writing is because she wanted to write a book that she wanted to read. And so that was a part of it too. I don't know. I just wanted there to be more variety in what I was called upon to perform
Mm. And also, I think that really applies to anyone who's listening. If
in.
there's
Hmm.
something you want to see, there's something you want to do, maybe you're not offered those opportunities or you don't see what you're looking for. It's like the opportunity to think maybe it's something that I could create, something that
Yeah.
I could do, I could write. We're not limited. We can look for those opportunities to do that. So, James, you won a Pulitzer. You've been nominated for
Yes.
Tonys.
Yes.
What is that success? And I'm sure there's been failure along the way too. What do you think that's taught you about yourself?
I think the thing at this past year of starting with the Pulitzer through Off Broadway Run, through Broadway, through the
Mm,
Tony season is that, oh, I can pretty much remain who I am,
mm,
even at the pinnacle of success
mm,
in this industry that I'm in.
mm,
I never felt myself change necessarily. I check in with people. I'm a person that takes temperature. In my marriage, I'm like, how
mm,
are we? Like, that's
mm,
just my impulse is to sort of see how I am in relationship with other people. I've been grateful that none of it has really changed. But actually, it's like made me more humble. I'm just about the work. I'm just about process, which
mm.
is kind of true. I mean, I also like to wear pretty clothes and walk around. That's true too.
Me too.
But but at the end of the day, what I love is the room. This thing I talk about is the work of the playwright. You do all of this work on the play, you come up with the idea, you write it, you draft it, you do readings of it, and then you get to rehearsal and you're in the room. And like
Mm,
that to me is the most potent space of
mm,
possibility for a playwright at a play because you have every resource available to you to make the play what you want it to be. If you come in with the value of the collaborative process being a part of what's going to make your play better. That was a thing that this process in particular, because it's the first time I really got to be in the room, I felt like all of my values and the things that I believed about theater making were true. to a certain extent. So that was another thing that I learned from getting to a place where you're incredibly resourced, is that I had to step it up a little bit. I had to work a little harder. It was more difficult. I realized that I could do it, and I also didn't lose myself in the process of trying to do it. So that felt very good.
Mm. One of the things I'm wanting to work on, and I'm sure a lot of people listening, is showing up as the most authentic, full version of myself. And
Yeah.
even though I work in coaching and I have coaches and therapists, I think I struggle with fully, I'm working on it. What would you say to someone listening? How you're able to do that?
I don't always do it. I think we humans are inherently performative. We
Mm,
perform gender, we perform who we are at work, which is different from who we are at home.
mm,
We perform in our relationships. Because people have said of me a lot in this year, like, you feel so authentic. It is also like, I'm exhausted and I'm not showing you that I'm exhausted. So how
mm,
authentic is it?
mm.
I think there's this balance. And I think
Yeah.
we get caught up in this sort of purity of an idea of being, oh, you're most authentic.
Mm,
Maybe sometimes you are. I feel like when I go to the doctor's office, I'm super authentic because I'm like, I'm not going to pretend in here. I need you. If you ask me a question, there's no
yeah.
space for that. But like, there are times where I am performing utter and complete presence when I am dog tired and I would so much rather be on a couch somewhere sleeping.
Mm,
And that's not inauthentic. I think authenticity at its core comes from nothing you're doing or saying tomorrow you're going to go, I shouldn't have said or done that.
mm,
That's when I feel my most authentic, because that means I've stepped outside of myself in some way. But I am always like, I'm not alone in this. Everybody is sort of in a space of
mm,
being what they think other people need them to be,
mm,
or being who they need to be for that other person to be
mm,
okay. Like, that's
mm,
another thing. We all do it. I try to just sort of, if I'm going to say it, if I'm going to do it, if I'm going to be there, I should be in my values. I should be in community with the people. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I am exactly my most pure, joyful, lovely, self confident. I could just be pretending to be all of those things, but I am all of those things, you know?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that's how I've begun to think about it.
Mm, hmm. You mentioned humility. And one of the things that I notice about you, I know we're looking at a screen, but you're so present. I ask a question and you lean in, you smile, you're listening. There's this beautiful light. There's humility there. There's like, you're truly present. It's really beautiful to sit in community with you here and be a part of that. Where do you think that comes from? How do you think about it? That isn't something that everyone does or everyone is capable of, and you exhibit it and you demonstrate it so beautifully.
I've heard people say this: you are the adult that you wish you had when you were young.
Mm,
And my family is amazing. I love my family. But it was a very sort of, I'm going to use the word eccentric child.
mm,
I was hyper emotional. I had such access to my emotions. Like, it was just crying, laughter, like all of it. And I was really inquisitive. I had a lot of questions. And that's a lot for adults. Like, go do something, go play. And I was a kid that always had so many questions. When I'm engaging with people, I want them to know
mm,
that I'm here, I am with you, I am listening. I'm very excited about what you're talking about. And that's always true. That's never not true. There's degrees of how engaged I am. Like, if this call was at 11 tonight, I wouldn't be as bright as I am. I want people to feel like I'm present. And for whatever reason, I didn't always feel like that was celebrated in me when I was a young person. It was always sort of like, he's precocious. Ah, okay, we'll
Mm,
deal with precocious as we typically deal with precocious, especially with young people, where I'm like, yes, everything you're saying is important. I want you to feel that for me. Maybe that's it. I don't
mm.
know.
That
I also
resonates
like,
with me.
yeah,
That really
I mean,
resonates with me. Yes.
I also like anybody that's coming to talk to me about big ideas, I
Mm,
brighten up. So much of life is, how are you?
mm.
Oh, that's great. Oh, I'm good. Yeah. How's work? Oh, wow. Oh, you got a promotion. That's exciting. No one ever goes, is that something you wanted? What was that process? Like,
Mm,
it's all very sort of, how fast can I get out of this conversation?
mm.
And I have been in that situation where I'm like, oh God, I just want to get past this conversation. So I'm not saying I'm always, but a part of me is leaning in hopes that the
Mm,
thing that's going to happen is going to be big, that we're going to talk
mm,
about something big.
mm,
I had a friend that passed away, Reuben Mitchell, very, very dear to me. We went to college together and then spent a lot of time in Philly together. And he used to say, I don't want small talk, I want big talk.
mm.
And that's just always stayed with me. And that's how we existed. We talked about big things. We talked about what do you think is going to happen at the end of the universe? Wouldn't that be so much more exciting to talk about at a dinner party
Mm.
than your IBS? Which sometimes have to talk to sort of like end the conversation. Sorry, too much information for the
No,
podcast.
well, that resonates so much with me, especially the piece that you just said. I'd never heard that we become the adults.
We become the adults that we wish we had when we were young. Yeah.
That resonates with me. Of course, great parents, love my parents. I think I am very much who I am today because my dad never hugged us growing up as kids. That was not a thing. We
Mhm.
didn't get hugs. And now he's
Mhm.
very much of a hugger with us and with grandkids. But growing up, I don't remember ever sitting in his lap or that wasn't a thing or like getting hugged or
Yeah.
anything. And I share a lot of my love with my kids, hugging, kissing, telling them I love them. I also listen deeply. What you talked about, I want to be that for people, listen and see the
Yeah.
possibility. And that's really important to me. And
Yeah.
because of work and just everything, that wasn't really a thing growing up. And
That's real.
so, yeah, so that resonates deeply with me. I think that's going to resonate with people listening too.
Hope so.
Like, interesting. Like, ooh, interesting. How does that connect to how I show up in the world? And you're right. Like, oh, how's your summer? Oh, busy. And it's like, yeah, okay.
I'd rather somebody come up to me and say, and this is how I've started to sort of like enter into conversations. This hasn't happened to me, but this is an example. Someone's like, how's your summer? Last week I saw an alligator just walking across the street. Can you believe that? Now I think people will react to me as if, and have like, he's strange. But you have somebody great when they're like, okay, I'm obsessed with alligators. You have to like when you come to somebody with something that's not mundane, it
Mm,
reveals something about them that they probably wouldn't revealed in that
mm,
space. But
mm.
they've come in prepared to do like chit chat. But if you start with, I went to a wedding yesterday and the bride fell in a pool. Can you believe that? Then we're talking. You have to sort of tilt people on their axis a bit to try to get past the sort of like surface level listening. Because then they have to go, wait, did I hear that correctly? It makes people lean in.
Mm. What have you noticed since you do that or try to do that as much as you can? What's been possible? What's the magic that's happened as a result of you leaning in?
The byproduct of it is that I think I probably have many people in my life that when they come to me because they want to talk about something heavy. So then I become a person that people want to talk to about complicated things, which is great. I love that. That's also a thing that you have to be conscious of. So that is a thing I've experienced. But I
Same.
also like
Same.
just have far more entertaining and I learn more.
Mm.
I learn more when I am always attempting to try to plumb a little deeper than we typically are told to do in polite society. And I like that. I like that I keep learning new things about people that I've known for years.
My husband likes to talk about that when he's meeting people. He likes big talk, not small talk. And he talks about giving people doorknobs. It's like if they take the doorknob and open that door into that conversation, he provides, okay, this topic or that topic. And if someone doesn't take any of the doorknobs, he's like, okay, that wasn't. But
Yeah.
if he offers something and they take it and they go open the door, turn the doorknob and go through, there can
Yeah.
be a wonderful conversation from that.
Yes. I love that. I like that imagery a lot. I'm going to steal that. It's great to think about like, here's a way in. I want to
Yeah.
stay
Yeah.
in with you.
Inviting people in. Yeah. So if someone's listening, James, because it sounds like you love what you do, you
I
found
do.
purpose in it. If someone's listening at their desk right now, at home, working from home, at their corporate office, walking, and they're thinking, I am not inspired by my work. I don't love necessarily what I do. Maybe it's not bad. It's just okay. What would you say to that person listening?
Hmm. I'd say to them, one, don't just quit your job. I feel like I need to start with that disclaimer. Don't just quit your job. If you don't know what it is that you really want to be doing, then spend some time when you can getting to a place where you have a better understanding of what it is that you really want to be doing. Because I feel like most people who are unhappy in their careers,
Mhm.
a lot of times those people are in positions where they have enough sort of security that it's not a job where it's like, if I quit this, I don't eat. It's maybe like they're in a position where they can daydream about what they want to be doing.
Mm. Mm.
But I think this is true for anybody. Like, if you find yourself in a position where you don't really know what you want to do, see what it is. See if you can spend some time with yourself, dreaming, ideating on what that is. And then, whatever that is for yourself, if you know what that is, the thing that I started to do when I was like, I want to start to shift away from acting is, what is one thing I can do this week to
Mm.
make that a reality?
Mm.
Then the goal setting started to become a little bit more frequent and a little bigger.
Mm.
So, what can I do today in conversation with a goal I've set for myself for this next 5 months?
Mm.
So, I'm going to write today. My goal is to write 10 pages. I rarely write 10 pages in like an hour, but say let's write 10 pages in an hour. Anticipation of a goal to
Mm.
submit this play to a festival that you want to, so that your goals, the things you're doing in your everyday practice, start to feed into these larger goals. But I think you have to really know where you want to be headed. I would also say, who in the world, in whatever industry that you're in or you want to be a part of, who are the people that are doing the things that you want to be doing? So,
Mm.
like when I was thinking about writing, I was like, who's writing kind of in the same way that I am interested in
Mm.
writing? Who's curious about the same subject matter? And that sort of became a little bit of a compass of where
Mm.
I wanted to direct my energy in terms of people I wanted to talk to and get in touch with, places that I wanted to work, places that could become potential artistic homes for myself. That's like a small thing that you can do in a
Mm.
quarter for yourself
Mm.
to help you advance to what it is that you want to be doing. So I think sometimes we're taught that you have to wipe the slate clean and start over.
Mm.
It takes much longer. Like, I
Mm.
am 40 something years old and reaching this moment. And there are people who have gotten here much quicker than
Mm.
I in their career. And for me, what was really great about the journey is that by the time I got to that moment, it didn't matter what happened.
Mm.
I was just so clear about what it is that I thought that this was, and this play was, and this production was, and how I felt about how it was meeting the world and it was doing the things that I wanted it to do.
Mm.
And I was happy with that. And I really do mean that. I
Mm.
would have been so sad for 3 weeks if I hadn't have been nominated for a Tony. I'm not going to lie about that. Now
Yeah.
it's recorded for all people to know. That is true. I would have been sad for about 3 weeks, and then I would have gotten over it,
Mm.
and I would have gotten back to work. And at the end of the day, that's the thing that I love the most, is
Mm.
sitting down with an idea that I cannot get out of my head and
Mm.
trying as best I could to squeeze this crazy thing I see in my mind into little words on a piece of
Mm.
paper,
Mm.
which is incredibly difficult to do. But I
Mm.
love it. I wouldn't change it for anything.
James, thank you so much for being here today. Where can people follow along? Where can people learn more about you? Tell us all the things.
Yeah, well, I'm only really on Instagram. I think it's JW Imes on Instagram. I'm on Threads, it's the same there. And then my website, which has all of my work and how to get in touch with me, it's www.jamesimes.com. And there's some little blurbs about each of the plays on there.
Mm. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me.